hear from her as a wrap-up. So I'll come to you, Mr. Victor Kai, because you're a member of the committee and you have been a member of the committee from the inception. Could you just tell us what the committee does and just like a bit about the technicalities, what the lay of the land in terms of submitting to the Nigerian Oscar Committee?
Thank you very much. So the international features category, which is to be called the foreign Oscars for, for the foreign languages, is that category that is meant for languages or for films produced in languages not other than English, but substantially other than English, which means that the language content has to be more than 50% in a language other than English. So that's the category. You can say it's a category for the rest of the world. The Oscar is originally an American award, but individual countries would pick a film, to submit as an entry for the year, and it's usually one film per country. So the committee is usually the local committee that will sit and receive the entries for the year, that meet the requirement, and then they would sit and adjudge and see which has the best chance, of representing the country, at the Oscars.
Great. So I think it's good to clarify that, because it's one category that all of this is for.
What do they have against you?
I'm not sure. And they're like, this is the best mic.
Okay, but let me just add something before I forget. And this is where a lot of controversy usually comes in. People will come and say, oh, this film was made in so-so language, it's such a great film, and all that and all that. We're going to clarify as we speak some more, but rules are rules, and they're not going to bend the rules for us. First of all, we have to be very intentional about from the minute you start making your film, you've got to be very, very intentional. If you transmit it on television or you go to Netflix first or any other place, you're not qualified. It has to be shown at a theater. In this case, now it can be in Nigeria, for at least 7 days, to be able to qualify. And you have to show proof. It's part of what you're going to be submitting. So if you go and do a Netflix movie and it is the biggest movie of all times, and you go and show it first on Netflix, sorry. The world may say, you may win the popular vote, but you don't win the collegiate vote. I'm borrowing from American elections.
Thanks for the clarification.
Yes.
I think I was coming to you, Denny, because it's a good segue, because ever since the creation of this category, which is 1948, so the only 3 African films have won the Best International Film with the Oscars. There's the South African Tutsi, the Algerian Z, the Ivory Coast Black and White in Color. And 2 of those films were co-productions with France. So, and like you said that you have to be intentional from the start. So coming now to you and your work with markets and festivals, because when you go into a market, you're pitching projects from the infancy, from the idea, to getting co-production partners, to getting to the point where you're finished and finding distribution and sales agents. So could you talk to us about this life cycle of being intentional about a global film award?
Yes, absolutely. So thanks first of all for having me here. So I don't have so much experience with winning Oscar, but of course with international film markets and co-production markets. And one suggestion which I can give is if you have a project which is really made or which has the possibility or an international appeal impact, then try to bring it to a co-production market, because those markets are so relevant also for the visibility of a film. It's not only about finding the right co-producer, but also creating visibility for a project, because if a project is selected at a co-production market, it's usually competing as well. It's seen, your pitch is seen by already festival programmers. And you know, if a film travels to festivals, there are also chances that those films qualify for Oscars, yeah.
Just because I guess in the audience you might have a mix of filmmakers who are more new to, could you explain just like what happens in a co-production market, how you get into a co-production market with a project, and just like just break it down a little bit more?
Of course, of course. So there are quite a lot co-production markets. There are some co-production markets which are more focused on a specific region. There are general co-production markets. So for example, at the Berlinale, there's a Berlinale co-production market, which is an international co-production market. But you have also some regional co-production markets which are more for producers from the region, for stories told in the region. At the Berlinale, it's really a global market. The process is that you have a project and you see potential of international co-production with this project to bring an international co-producer in. So there are a lot of advantages, of course, to have also an international co-producer on board when it comes later to distribution, that you can also is that you have a partner who is also trying to bring a local distributor in at this specific co-production country. So you submit the project, you see the potential. Hopefully the organizers, the selection committee of the co-production market sees this potential as well and selects a project to be presented at the co-production market. Yeah. So you come with a project to the market. There's usually a pitching session where you pitch your projects in a very effective way. It's also suggested to have also some pitch training in advance, because you really need to come to the point. You really need to catch your audience right away when you bring such a project to the stage. And in the audience, there are usually potential co-producers, but also broadcasters, festival programmers, so people who bring this project later on to the screens to be broadcasted on television as well. And that gives a lot of visibility, this kind of co-production market. And usually after the pitch, there are also some meeting sessions, curated, organized meeting sessions, where the organizers of the co-production market try to find the potentially right partners for your project and organize those meetings. So those are usually 15 to 20 minutes meetings. And hopefully you find then at the co-production market your potential partners.
And this life cycle is at the beginning of the film, but at the time it comes to the committee is at the end of the film life cycle, right? So the film is done. So coming to you, John, Mr. Njama, wanted to ask, like, so what are this technical, I guess, what do you want people to know, especially with the technical requirements, going through the submissions? Can you give us an idea of what the pitfalls are at this point, when it gets to the point where they're submitting and they're wondering why it doesn't meet technical requirements? So what are the pitfalls they can avoid at an early stage before it gets to the point where they're trying to compete?
Basically, most of the times when movies are submitted over the years with the committee, a whole lot of people think that the language criterion is the one and only, not understanding the fact that you have to make a good film first before you're thinking about whether and all that. But I think it's pretty simple. Make a good film. Make sure the sound is good. Make sure the technicalities are okay. Make sure that the production design is okay and is in tandem with your thematic preoccupation, as the case may be. You know, it's the basics, basically. Before we start to look at concept, before we start to look at how well the story is told, before we start to look at language, basically, you know, and all of that.
Okay, I have another question for you. I like that you said the most important thing is to make a good film, right? And that should be the reward in itself, right? For the filmmakers here, the reward is making a good film. first. But I think just to give some context, I guess like in Nigeria specifically, we have more of a producer-driven market where a producer hires a director and makes a film. For the context of competing globally and internationally with the audience, you find that a lot of the films that have gone on are director as auteurs, right? So you have a writer-director who has a project he wants to make and makes a good film. So is there any so I guess talking more to the directors now and getting their film made and approaching producers, people with ideas that are still at the early infancy, like how would you what are, I think maybe we should free this if it's not working. But what are the tips you can give to a creator at this point to get the film made, a good film?
The Americans say if the game is baseball, get yourself a bat. And if you have a problem swinging it, you best get out of the game. So I think filmmakers should learn how to swing if they want to play baseball. And like Mr. Rai said here, it has to be deliberate. You're shooting for the streamers, it's deliberate. You know the you know the distributors, so it's deliberate. If you're shooting for YouTube, it's deliberate. Oscar is the big stage, so be big about your plans. That's all I can say, basically.
Okay, great. I'll come back to the. I guess there's the film and there's the microfilmmaker, but there's also the structure. Because this is a country award, right? And there's a lot of lobbying that goes on. It's not. So in as much as the filmmakers make the film, it's the country that promotes the film. So I'll start with you to see what we're doing, especially with the unions and more maybe with the ministries, but are there, we've had submissions in the long list in the past few years. So what is the country doing in a sense, or what is the organization? And by country, I'm not just talking about the minister or the president, but what are the support structures in place to have a chance?
Is that for me?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Okay, so I think in the last one or two committees, we've had the MDs of Nigerian Film Corporation as part of the committee. So they sit. Nuhu Ali was with us in the last one. Chidia was in the previous one, the immediate past Nigerian Film Corporation managing director. So before now, and as you know, the vice president said it, and the minister said that the other day, the government has not done anything for this industry, really. We have up until this moment, but now, done what we've taken ourselves up to this level, but now I think they begin to realize that there's a need for them to really get involved in what we're doing. So this particular category is like the World Cup, if you like, of the movie industry, because many countries are participating. Tutsi, the South Africans were very, very deliberate about it. They planned, well ahead. They knew they wanted the Oscars, and they did all that was necessary. And you use the word lobbying. I have a first-hand experience I'd like to share. It wasn't. Now, there are many routes to the Oscars, and I think it's important to know that as well. Even if you're not going through the international features, you can go through the students' film, the Oscar for shorts. But, a documentary, Waiting for Asana, that we did a couple of years back, was at Sundance, went to almost all the major festivals. We qualified at River Run Film Festival. River Run is in the States, and it's an Oscar qualifying festival. So we had gotten to that point. Now, we weren't working for the Oscars. We didn't have that in mind. But And there's a song that comes to my mind. Now that, who knows that song? Love. We found love, what are we gonna do with it? And so we found love at Riveron. So when we did, and then now, okay, you're qualified for the Oscars now. Now begin to submit. Then it was about maybe 50 DVDs at the point, and some of the other, everything that we needed to submit at the time. We started gathering all these things, and I called a friend of mine. I told you know, Sydney Levine. She's quite influential. She's Jewish American and a very powerful woman in Hollywood. And I said, Sydney, I'd like you to see this short film, this documentary that we've made. It's qualified for the Oscars. And she said, let me tell you, so she liked it. I said, you know what? You need an Oscar strategist. Now, that was the first time I was hearing anything like that. And she said she was going, this strategy is a strategy for shorts and documentaries. So she introduced us, but guess what? We didn't have a budget. And so at that point, excuse my language, we're largely adults here. Okay, let's use football. Here is the striker, here's an empty post, and you can't score. You know what I mean? It's like at that point, you just go limp, you know, in the knees or whatever. We had everything going for us, but we didn't, because we were not, you know, deliberate. And then that's when it occurred to me that, and this is very, very important, and that's why I would encourage us, as much as possible, attend film festivals, film markets, and all that, because the people you meet, it's a small community. And it is among these people, if I didn't know Sydney, I could not have spoken to her. You know, that strategist, what does he do? He knows all the publicists, he knows members of the people of the academy, you know, and all that. They're his friends. So what he will do is, like, he'll be a voice in the room, and he'll say, hey, guy, take a look at this, take a look at this. I mean, so what they're doing is basically bringing it to the fore. So you can have a great movie, and yet no one will be aware. Now, coming back to the issue of countries as well, countries have to be very, very deliberate about this. Like I said, South Africa was not, I mean, they were not going to that party with like a joke. They were very serious about it. You know, so what countries need to do is take ownership of it. From the minute the winner is announced, then every support that that movie needs, they need to give to the filmmaker to make sure, the same way you sponsor your football team or your soccer team to either the Olympics or the World Cup, is the same way you need to support your local, you know. Then something else, he was talking about co-production. You asked him a question about co-production. Why co-production may help, and it does, is very, very helpful, is that you then get many partners. Our entry for last year, Juju, Mami Water, you know, had a few international partners. What happens therefore is that each of these partners, both from different countries and all that, now have a vested interest in it. So there's more than one voice. It's not just you talking, but the funders, everybody who has put money in it, wants, you know, the rewards that go with it. You know, I mean, who doesn't want to have an Oscar-winning film in there, you know, in there? So it's important. So the more partners you have, the more influential that film is likely to be. And I'll just drop this in too. Sorry, you come. Yes, I want to drop this as well. I don't know if any of you have watched Joy on Netflix. You watched Joy? Okay. I was the line producer for it in Nigeria here. It was largely in pidgin English, the Nigerian story, you know, on trafficking. But it was Austria's entry for the Oscars. Okay? And it was shot by the director was an Iranian, you know, an Iranian lady. So now you find that there are several, you'll find, you know, multiple interests because of investors in the project. And one thing that most people don't know is that it does not even have to be your local language. It doesn't have to be a Nigerian language. It can be shot here in any other language and it can still be submitted. That's one fact that a lot of people are not aware of.
That's great. Thank you. I think that's a great segue, actually, because that is happening as well, where there are co-productions and it's set in a particular place, but it's owned by the country who funds it, right? So we had I Am Not a Witch as well. That was also the UK submission to the Oscars. It was a Welsh Zambian film by Rongano. So it's they
Hello,
are
ma.
like,
If you can hear me, I want to hear hello from you, ma.
why always me?
Hello? Sorry, we came in. Can you guys hear me?
Okay. Oh, of course.
Oh,
Okay. Thank you. Yeah. So before we kind of continue, I want to come to you because you. Okay. Thank you. Because I think you have a lot to add, like in terms of how the script productions could work.
Can come back online now, ma.
Yeah, I wanted to give another example, what you were just saying, because the German entry to the Oscars this year is the new film by Mohamed Rasulov, The Seed of the Sacred Fig, which is an Iranian film, or it was shot and made by an Iranian director. But because of the political circumstances, it was not possible to submit this film as an Iranian entry. Yeah, and it is a co-production with Germany. So the German committee selected this film to represent Germany at the end at the Oscars. Yeah. So if you see the film, it looks not really like a German film, but it's really.
But if the prize comes, it's German.
Yeah, but it's Iranian language, so it can be submitted. And there was something else I also wanted to stress or to mention, because we were also talking about documentaries here, and there's also the documentary section at the Oscars. And for this section, there's not this need to be in foreign language. So, and there are also some festivals which are qualifying for the documentary category. Yeah, Sheffield, for example, but also Berlinale as well. So there are festivals which are really a springboard also for documentary films, and yes, that's also a great opportunity. And another last thing I wanted to mention, because we were talking about the money it needs also to run an Oscar campaign, and don't underestimate it, because the US is quite expensive. So some countries really invest a lot of money, giving a lot of funding as well. Before being at the European film market, I was working for German Films, which is the institution to organize the selection of the German entry, and also giving some funding, yeah, for the Oscar campaign, and it was several 100,000 euros if a film was selected or was on the shortlist. So first stage, did we mention it? First stage is that the film is the official entry of a country, but then there's later on a shortlist, and then later on the nomination. And so every step needs more money for publicity, for the campaign. Yeah, it's maybe like a political campaign which we are seeing right now in the US, that you really need to create a buzz, yeah, to also convince the voters, the Academy members, to really watch the film and vote for the film. Yeah.
Absolutely, you're trying. I think the goal is to get thousands of people to watch the film across the world. You said that you had to send physical CDs at the time. Now, I think they organize screenings in certain cities, so it's an expensive endeavor. But I actually want to go back to you, Denny, and the question about the lobbying strategy and what your country, what Germany does step by step, because there's also kind of a funding for getting into a festival, and there's also a funding for getting the shortlist. So right, so if there's if the country funds the film, like how does the country promote the film through the life cycle of the film before getting to the Oscars?
Yeah, there's this institution which I was just mentioning, German Films, and they are in charge of promoting German film productions abroad. Yeah, so they are also trying, and that was also my job, to bring German films to international festivals as a springboard for an international career, also for international distribution. And I think that's really the starting point also for Oscar campaigns, yeah. And there are some festivals which are really at the best time to launch a film. So Venice is such a festival, yeah, because if a film premieres in Venice, that's really the right timing to start also, yeah, this Oscar career. And what does the country? Germany invests some money, not as much as other countries, but if they then select a film to be the official entry, then usually there's also the effort to have an American distributor and to send also the director to every single festival in the US to convince every Academy member to vote for this film and to bring it on the shortlist. And next step is then to have it on shortlist. Usually, there's also a publicist really working on having a lot of press articles, reviews about this film. So it's all about the attention at the end.
Great. Okay. So hello again. Thank you for your patience. It's great to see you and hear from you. So we're talking, I don't know how much you heard. We've been talking about, I guess, the technicalities and talking about co-production. And I guess for the question I have now is like, what would a nomination, a shortlist, and then a win, what would it do for the landscape? So what is the, I guess, the vision behind the committee set up to do this selection, but what is the vision? Like, what is the importance of a nomination and then a win to us or to Nigeria?
Oh, good. Of course, that's like every country and every filmmaker's dream to get the Oscars. So of course, it's going to, be like an awesome moment for us as well. But as a committee, we're also being very intentional with what we're going to start doing moving forward. Just because I had some of the conversation that you had, Mr. Victor reiterated about, we not having enough government support like we wish we would. But I think with this government, there's a lot of attention with the submission that we've had now. There's a lot of attention and then paying attention, asking questions, how can we do better? And we as a committee, we're also setting kind of initiative because, like you said, first of all, it takes money to even do a good film. And so we have to start from the basis of how to make sure that filmmakers have access to funds to be able to do the kind of movie that they would like to do, to be able to play on this field, and then follow it through. Like, the Oscars is not a child's play. You get nominated, you need to follow it up. You need to do a lot of publicity. There has to be money behind it for you to also promote your film and all of that. So of course, the win with this year, we're hoping, something good come out with the nomination that we put out. And that will be a stepping forward to greater things to come for the industry, because I think this industry deserves a win. And we're not going to relent. We're still going to work hard, and that's why we're also coming on your forum to also talk about it. We are open. Filmmakers who want to ask questions can also go to www.thenosc.org to find out information. Like you said, you have to be intentional. You have to educate yourself. You have to be more strategic in planning your next project. And also, we as a committee is also trying to figure out government has to participate more in terms of creating that enabling environment for the filmmaker to thrive. So a win would be an awesome moment for Nigeria for sure.
Great. I think it's the idea of creatives working as individuals, as like silos. So there's the co-producing. Even when we talk about co-producing, we're talking about co-producing with the North, with the global North, with the States, with Europe. But there's also co-productions that can happen with ourselves and Pan-African. So is there something you can speak to that and how that could maybe strengthen our efforts? I guess for official co-production, and that goes beyond to the government and all of that, but just as building a community of filmmakers here, for the filmmakers who are already in the room and who work together, how can we strengthen that? How can we strengthen our own national and Pan-African co-productions?
Well, like having a forum like this where you guys are getting people together to network is also very important. And like you said, when they were talking about the various films of various countries, you named like 3 countries who have won the Oscars from Africa. You also have to be intentional to see, okay, who do I need to co-produce? Co-production is also important because it opens you to more access, to more information, to more reach. And like certain countries like the UK did a film did various films in different languages other than English. They were all intentional about that. So we can also co-produce amongst ourselves and also co-produce with different countries we feel might give us a better chance or a better entry, a better relationship of getting the Oscars. So the forums like this, having discussions and researching and who is going to be the best partner for you and what projects you think will benefit both partners who are coming together to make this particular film. So I think it lies with the government, it also lies with us. It also lies with us as a filmmaker to sort of like tilt the government the way we want them to go if they are willing. So, but those are some of the conversations that also we're having behind the scenes to keep moving this forward.
Thank you. So we have about 15 minutes left. I want to open it up to the audience. Do you have questions for the panelists?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jennifer, and I'm a film producer. I found this meet session so, like I'm literally shaking because my film was submitted last year. It's titled Kinani to you guys, these amazing people. And I wrote a few questions down, but I'll just go with one. We've heard you guys talk about, publicity and putting it out there, be intentional from the beginning, and yada, yada, yada. How much of that is truly what goes into the selection versus, say, lobbying or, say, not my friend or, say, not my connection, right? Because if I do a film and say, who am I going to mention? Someone fancy. Let's think of someone fancy that's making film right now. Say Dr. Okai. He's on the committee, so maybe we can't choose him. But someone of his stature, if he makes a film and he's already friends with all the people in the committee, how much of it are they going to honestly say, Jennifer, your film was so great. We love Dr. Okai, but listen, we have to push you forward. Or are they just going to go have tea and eat a bar at his house and put his stuff up? So you know what I mean? So I think I really want to know how far that, if they're really hustling for us, or if it's, okay, the film is good, but, you got that. And really quickly, so I don't get the microphone a second time. Okay, you guys talk about co-production and how it's important to push it out there. If there are more stakeholders, then it's going to reach a larger audience and all of that good stuff. So as a filmmaker, when we did Kenani, we spent a whole lot of money. I mean, the film you can see from the film that these people tried. They invested, But we are not, quote unquote, known filmmakers out here in Nigeria, right? So if I want to do this whole co-production thing, how do I convince a Mr. I'm sorry, sir, what's your name? The gentleman from France? From Germany, I'm sorry.
Dennis.
Dennis, okay, thank you. So if I want to convince Mr. Dennis now that, oh, I'm such a great filmmaker, here's the link to some of the work I've done, collaborate with me, versus someone who's more prominent, who will be in his ear telling him, she might be a good filmmaker, but don't take a chance on her. She hasn't broken the box office. Get with the you know what I mean? So is it real or are we just bullshitting? Thank you.
Are you direct on the question? Okay, so let me take that.
Okay, yes, I think.
First of all, you have to understand we run a very transparent. I'm a filmmaker myself, and I will tell you for fact, we have not started in the Nigerian film industry. We need to up our game, whether we like it or not. We are trying, but in terms of sometimes we also need to look ourselves in the face and really go and do the work. Especially for us filmmakers, is so important because sometimes when a lot of films are thrown at us, are like, oh my God, this. So it's not even a complete full package. But somehow we also say we need to keep moving forward, to keep pushing it till they get it. There's certain criteria that are already listed that we need to follow. Do you understand? And as even if the 5 films meet certain criteria, then there are other options. Okay, which one gives it a better view? Which one has the better link? So it's a decision that was, and it's open ballot system. Nobody is convincing anybody otherwise. People vote on their conversation. People come, talk about the film, their strengths and their weaknesses. And mind you, you're contesting with other films. So there has to be just one film. If we can put a lot of film out there, we'll. And the good thing about the community is that we're open, even when you're not a popular film. So it's not about you being popular. It's about, is the film good? Is the acting good? Is the technicality good? Is the direction, the intention, is this a good representation for the country? It doesn't matter. It's an open, equal playing field for everyone, you know, whether you're popular or not. Because if you do a good film, nobody cares. It's a good film. And that's when you even become popular, because, oh my God, this filmmaker has what it takes. Do you understand? So that's for the committee. We're very transparent in our processes. And we really want to encourage filmmakers, all ourselves. We really need to dive in and do great films. And it's so important that we put that in our head and be very intentional when we want to move forward. Because sometimes you think we've done great work, and then when you put it alongside other films, you're like, I don't think we have a chance. So now I think we need to go back to the drawing board and really speak to ourselves and do great film. And keep encouraging one another till we get it. But for the Oscar Selection Committee, it's not about man, no man. It's all about the work. And if the work meets the criteria, the work moves on.
So let me just
That's great,
answer
yeah.
that briefly.
Okay. I wanted to, I wanted you to take the second question.
No, I can, because I was not really selecting projects in the past for a co-production market. I was just explaining how it works. And usually there are also committees. There are film experts reading the scripts. Yeah, and they take it very seriously to read all the submitted scripts. So it's also a lot of work to read all these scripts and then to select, for example, for the Berlinale co-production market, they select 35 projects where they see those experts potential for international co-production. And so I think it's also a very fair process usually which is going on, and it's not really depending on connections. So the connections, that was maybe more related to the career after the film is made. Yeah, that films are promoted to the Academy members. Yeah, because the Academy members need to see those films at the end to vote for those films. Yeah, so I hope this is okay. Is it okay?
You wanted to add something, Mr.
Yes.
Victor?
So I wanted to say that if you look at the trend, because the issue of man on man doesn't come up at all. Look at some of the past entries. Apart from Lionheart, which was our first submission by Genevieve, which even didn't make it because it fell short on the language requirement. You know, it was it didn't meet up to the 50%. So although we submitted it, but it didn't make it. Milkmaid, an excellent movie. The director, the producers, the actors are not who anybody here know. People here don't even know them, but it was an excellent piece of film. You know, again, they may not have had the muscle to be able to push it as they should, but it was a great work. Each time, the movies I'm going to mention, they've competed with very well-known names, very influential filmmakers. I don't want to mention names here. After that, I mean, Mami Wata, we saw, I mean, that won a prize in Sundance, obviously. It was our submission for last year. The year before, we didn't have an entry. Mami Wata, Tayabasi, some know him here, not very many know him. He's not one of those very big name filmmakers. The one we submitted this year, Mataba, the one that's qualified. I mean, Prince Aboki is not a name. You may know him because we are probably in, maybe in some groups together, but not too many people know. But if you look at the movie, you know that great work has been done. And in any case, as I said earlier on, you may make the greatest movie. It's like a beauty pageant. You may be the most beautiful girl out there. If you don't enter the pageant, there's no way you can be Miss Nigeria or Miss World. You have to compete. And to compete means you must meet the requirements. Okay? So, yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, there's somebody there. Can we get the mic to the...
Hi, hello. Thank you for sharing your insights. It's really good to hear. I'm John. I'm a director. And I guess my question is, in Nigeria, would you say to make director-driven auteur work, does the director have to become their own producer as well? Or how can you make kind of director-driven work? Because it's really inside. I didn't know that it was quite producer kind of led, so that was good to hear. So yeah, that's my question.
Just like every just like the actors, you're casting for a movie, you need to get the right actors to convey your message and your content and all of that. Same thing goes for the director. If you're a producer and you need to get a director that works for you, that you think is intelligent enough, you think has strong creative prowess to convey your message for you. So I think it behoves on you to make that decision and not on us.
So you're a director, just to be clear.
What's this question actually? I'm also confused.
No, I think I understand him. She
Can you
stirred
make a director, a producer, and a director at the same time? Is that what you're saying?
No. Chioma stirred the controversy when she said it's a producer, heavily producer-driven, and I beg to disagree.
Okay.
You know, at the Directors Guild, we say primus inter pares, first among equals, and that's what it is. We will take the controversy outside here, but I would rather that we focus on the topic of the day, which is Oscars and co-production. Because if we start on that note, honestly, we will forget what we came here to do.
That's fine. Thank you. Thank you.
Any other questions? But I think, but just to your points, I'm not getting into it. But you're a director looking for a producer, right? No. Okay. All right. So we'll come back to you. Okay. Any other questions? Okay. So great. I think if we can go with some final words in terms of to the filmmakers, to the people here in the room, how can we go big or go home? I'll start with you, Mr. John.
First of all, I'll say you need to learn to, we as Nigerians now, you need to learn to trust the committee to make the right decisions. Because if you start to think whether we are biased or not, then we're not in the same boat together. I see this whole understanding like a big ship, and we need to paddle to shore together. And like I said before, we need to be intentional about making movies. We need to encourage one another. We are beginning to set up different areas where we can speak and encourage filmmakers so that they understand what we're looking out for. Because the direction for the Oscars is not like, there's no particular direction to it. It all depends on how you want to swing the bat. So be very thorough, basically, as a filmmaker. If you have any entry, if you want to put an entry for the Oscars, be very thorough, be very deliberate, and be very open to even making mistakes and be daring, you know.
Thank you.
Okay, since we're here talking about Oscar entries and all that, I would say go to the site, both the local site, nosc.org for the Nigerian entries, and then go to the main Oscar, oscar.org, and then read the rules under international features or international, so read the rules so that from the time you start, you know exactly what you're doing. Please don't judge us. If you see a movie that is great out there, if it didn't follow the rules, we have filmmakers, and let me put it here, filmmakers who are so entitled, they will not follow the rules, they will come, and then they want to twist, and thank God for members of the committee, you cannot twist us. We are people of integrity. They will come, they will go to the media, want to use media to blackmail, you know, and say, oh, we made a great movie, this, that. You may have made a great movie. You took it first to Netflix. You didn't meet the rule. You may have made a very good movie. It didn't have the language requirements. You cannot blackmail us. The world may think you have the best movie, but if you're not following the rules, forget it. So be very intentional. I mean, you can make for every other thing, but if that is also part of your agenda, not as an afterthought, then from the beginning, read the rules, follow the rules, and then you can then be free to say whatever you want to say, having done everything that you need to do. And they also remember that you also have to, it has to be screened in a theater for a minimum of 7 days. And I forgot one aspect. The artistic input must be largely from that particular country, which means you cannot have foreign, an American DP, an American director, all the heads of department coming from the US, and then you have actors, maybe the lead even coming from Ghana, and then you call it a Nigerian entry. It's not going to work. Okay? So read the rules very well. They're strict on these things. And hopefully I'll see you at the very top. Thank you.
Which co-production give again. So bring as many partners in as possible. We were not really talking about the role of sales agents, which is also, they play also an important role, because films which are distributed in many territories internationally have, of course, a higher chance to be seen, to to have exposure. And at the end, it's about exposure, about attention. So make use of the opportunities of
Great. Before I have one final question for you, if you can answer with your final words, Ms. Stephanie. But it's a long game, right? So I think a lot of the countries plan 10 years, 20 years in advance. Like, it's not something that happens in 1 year or 2 or 5 years. So can you tell us about like what the long game could be, along with your final words, and how to play this long game?
Okay, first of all, I want the filmmakers to understand that we're all filmmakers, very active filmmakers at that, and we're all looking out for each other's interests, and looking out for one another. The Oscar committee is there to serve you, serve all of us. And I just want to add, in terms of what Mr. Okai said, just that people don't think you don't have to use a foreign DP, just that you have to make sure that majority of your crew has to be, come from the local country that is submitted. So you just have that, just, so that people are not confused about that. It's a longer, I'm even glad that now there's a lot of awareness that is coming on, and we as a committee want to continue to bridge awareness so that filmmakers we want filmmakers understand what it takes or what they need to do in order to participate in the international features and more. And because I feel sometimes filmmakers don't want to research, they just want you to serve the thing. But you as a filmmaker, you also need to educate yourself with what is happening. If you want to do an Oscar film, be very intentional about it. We are also liaising with the government to see how we can push this further. We're trying to figure out what kind of funding we can put in place to make it easier, because submitting we have to understand it from the producer and the filmmaker's point of view, because this is a language film. If you're going through the Oscar committee, this is a language film that you're submitting. Of course, some people might have oh, how am I going to make my money back? So they are also afraid, do I submit it for the Oscars or do I go straight to the streamers? So that becomes like a very challenging decision for the filmmaker to make. And that's why, sometimes people say, okay, let me just go straight to the streamers and not submit it for Oscars. But we're becoming very intentional in terms of liaising with government, trying to figure out what kind of funding they can set aside so that filmmakers can have access to this thing, so that it's sort of like, kind of like a cushion, and also give them the ability to be able to expand and tell big, interesting stories that we know we can tell. So those are some of the, different initiatives that we're putting in place, creating awareness and just creating different forums, but also continue to have this conversation. Get also contacts with international bodies just to make sure that we're all in the international conversation of where these decisions are being made. And so those are some of the strategies that we're putting in place. But go to NRIC website, look out for when the call for entry will be. If you have a great film, if you know someone who has a great film, encourage them to submit, because if you do not submit, you will not be among the films that we're going to review. So, but thank you also for having this platform and for having us at your event.
Thank you. Thank you so much for being here. I think just finally, I guess it's to submit, but it's also to make a great film, and you make great films by watching great films. So it'll be good to watch films. There's not one route to the Oscars, like Mr. Victor said. So you can do the international feature, but you can also do documentaries. You could do short films. You could go through Oscar qualifying festival. So there are many ways to skin the cats, or or how they say it. And also think about the breadth of it. So the co-productions, how do I get my films from pitching stages into markets? How do I connect with sales agents? How many people have to see the film for the film to have a standing chance, right? So it's about collaboration with ourselves, with the rest of the world. It's about making great films, and I think finally the reward is in the film itself as well, and to also see that is reward in itself. But good luck with the Oscars, and thank you for your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.